Hello, and welcome again to Adventures with ADHD, where we not only shine the spotlight on fabulous ADHD, autistic, and neurodivergent folk, we have some discussions that are meaningful to us. So that is why Nikki has joined me today. Hi, Nikki. Thanks again for joining me.
Hello, lovely to be here.
So Nikki and I were speaking the other day about sensory issues, and one of my big triggers for sensory overload, or not even overload, a sound that really penetrates my soul, I would say,
Mm.
really hurts my ears. Do you get that, Nikki? Do you get sounds that hurt your ears?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and my key one is exactly the same as yours, but I'll let you explain that in a minute. There's lots of things for me that I even if there's just too much of general noise, it becomes really, it makes me dizzy. I've left training courses before because there's been so much going on, like in terms of different sounds and different voices, that I've physically felt like dizzy and as if I'm going to pass out. And then, sometimes it's just a noise that you just focus on, and it becomes such like on your nerves. It's like, I always say it's like fingernails down a blackboard, and it's all you can hear and all you can focus on. And then that has such an impact on your nervous system
Yeah,
that it just, I don't know about you, but it makes me feel so unwell, and
yeah.
it's not a good experience.
No,
But
and
my
it,
main one is the same as yours.
yeah, and it kind of people need to realize, and this is what I tell in my training sessions, that it literally changes our emotional states.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of us being awkward or
No.
so. And also, I just want to make the point for the listeners and viewers that what we're talking about today is kind of sensory processing issues. So
Mm.
different, I would say, to kind of being distracted by sounds, kind of more with the ADHD side of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
Um, like, oh, there's a sound, what's that? I'm not going to use the squirrel analogy, and
No,
I just did, which I'm a bit annoyed about because it's so overused. But, there's a sound, what's that? It's not that. This
no.
is kind of more hardcore than that, I would say. Do you agree?
Yeah, and it's a really strange thing to explain to somebody if they don't experience it, because it can feel like a physical pain. Like for me, it can feel, I can get into a state of panic with sound. Like if it's so intrusive in terms of how I'm experiencing it. And that's probably a really good word. It's not that I'm hearing it, I'm experiencing the sensory overload, and it has a physical impact on me, which isn't about, oh, I can hear it, that's annoying or that's distracting. And I'm kind of like, it's not like that. It's that is having a really detrimental impact on my well-being. And like I said, like sometimes I can feel dizzy, sick, like really quite unwell,
Yeah.
um which isn't the same as just hearing something that's a bit annoying.
That's a really good distinction. Thank you. I'm glad we kind of talked about that. So what I was something that's been bothering me since I did a training session probably 2 years ago, maybe one, who knows? Don't know. Haven't got much of a concept of time, but it was within the last couple of years. And in my training sessions, I'm really vulnerable. I really share the
Yeah,
things. I share my brilliance. I share my challenges. And
yeah.
this is a massive challenge for me. And I opened up and I was talking about sensory overload, sounds in particular. And I said, one sound that really gets to me and I cannot cope with is the sound of babies crying.
Mm, mm.
And that's quite a tough thing to say. And it's not about the baby.
No.
Babies are cute, right? Some of them.
Mm.
I
Yes, they are, when they're not crying.
when they're not crying, they're very cute. But this is about me, not about the
Yeah,
baby.
yeah, absolutely.
And a woman straight away kind of called out. She said, "Yes, but nobody likes the sound of a baby crying. A mother certainly wouldn't. That's why she goes and soothes the baby.
Mm,
And I was a bit, at the time, I was kind of in training mode and I wasn't
yeah,
expecting that sort of comment. So I just kind of, I was like, yeah, of course, of course. And then I carried on talking about whatever.
yeah,
But afterwards, and ever since, it
yeah,
really haunted me because actually she completely missed the point.
yeah.
I wasn't talking about, I hate this. I was talking about the sound of babies crying, but its impact on me.
It's how it gives you sensory overload,
Yeah,
not the fact that the fact that it's a baby is irrelevant because it's not about the baby. It's
yeah,
about how that particular sound has a impact on you and how you feel and how you feel safe. I don't know about you, but sounds like that for me. And mine's the same as you. It's the sound of a baby crying, and my best friend Joe, if we're in a cafe or anything like that and a baby starts crying, it literally has this kind of physical impact on me. And
yeah,
it's not that I don't care about the baby, it's that I don't feel safe. It does something to me that stops me feeling safe. Whereas Joe, who's got children, will just be like, oh, and her natural instinct is to pick the baby up and nurture it. But when I say to her, it's not that I don't care about the baby, but I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I think sharing, when we were talking about this, you sharing that as a vulnerability is huge, as like something that affects you, is a real vulnerability, because it's almost not socially acceptable to say
yeah,
that the sound of a baby crying has a anything other than a positive or do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
you're criticizing a baby, but that's actually not what you're saying at all.
No, like complete. It's, yeah, it's like you say. It's nothing to do with the baby. It's just that high pitched tone that kind of penetrates the ears and really hurts. And then, like you
Yes.
say, changes the emotional state. And I pretty much, if I haven't had much sleep, I will kind of go into fight or flight. And
Yeah,
of course, my natural way is flight, get out of
get
there,
out.
which if you're in a shop, you can do. Well, you'd have to drop your shop,
Yeah, I know.
drop
I can
your
hear a
shopping.
baby 10 aisles down and I
Yeah,
will get out as quickly as I can, not because of the baby, but because of the effect the noise has had. It makes me feel, sounds like the oddest thing to say. I don't feel safe when I am triggered,
mm,
a sound has that impact on you, like physiologically, you want to get yourself to safety
yes,
because of the impact it has. I
yeah,
have been known to put a shopping basket down in an aisle and leave. If
yeah.
I've been really tired, I'm like, I've got to get out.
Yeah, no, I nearly left a whole load of like a whole trolley full of shopping the other day. But
I
that
mean,
was
let's all be thankful for the fact I don't have children and I've never just left a baby in an aisle.
there
I
is
wouldn't,
that.
by the way, before anybody starts to think I'm
But yeah, I mean, we laugh. However, this situation had a real effect on me
yeah,
because I was look, I was misunderstood.
yeah.
And in that moment, I wasn't prepared for it. I'm good at training, but that everyone has their limits.
I'm going to ask you what I asked you the other day. What do you think it was about that woman's response that I guess has been difficult for you or has left you thinking about that for the last couple of years? What was it about that?
I think it was her jumping to the conclusion. So making an assumption. I hate assumptions.
Yeah.
Making an assumption about me. This is how I felt. She
Yep,
may
yep,
not
yep.
have. I don't know what her ultimate intention was. Um, I felt like she was making an assumption about
Yeah.
me and not listening to what
Yeah.
I was saying. So I didn't feel heard. I felt misunderstood.
Yeah.
Um, and this massive assumption. So she completely missed the point, and that's so frustrating because I guess throughout my whole life been my experience. So it really hit home.
And I know we've talked about this, but I think something that immediately struck me when we were having a conversation around this the other day was the fact that because it was a baby, and something I struggle with the judgments and the misconceptions or not feeling heard or seen is then something has for me, this is how I can process things, that somebody makes an assumption that isn't true, that could be around the fact that you have no empathy with children, and that for me feeds into an absolutely incorrect stereotype or belief around autistic folk. And that's something I said to you, wasn't it? Was it that some part of it was tied into the fact that not only did you feel like you hadn't been heard and you were misunderstood, was there a frustration around it almost fed into an incorrect stereotype and you didn't have the opportunity to reflect and respond at the time?
Yeah. And that's why we're here now having this conversation, because it's so
Yeah.
important. And I think you're right. There was probably there was a part of me that felt not attacked, but felt misunderstood around
Yeah.
my feelings around babies. I mean, I think babies are great. They're
Yeah.
just cutest things when they're not crying. But again, they're still cute. That's not the point, and I was a teacher for 17 years. I've
Yeah.
got nieces and nephews,
Yeah.
it's not about the person, the baby. So yeah, I think that was probably part of it as well. How while 2 years later, I'm still feeling a bit aggrieved, let's say.
And I think this is like, we didn't talk about this, but it's just something that's kind of coming to me as we're speaking now, is I think it also shows the sensitivity that we can have to those
Mm,
type of situations and how we can reflect and worry about how we've been perceived, and that real I don't know where, for me sometimes it feels like a bit of a fear, but I can really like replay things over and over in my mind and worry about how that moment might have been perceived or what somebody else might have thought. Because the opposite, when people assume that, I've had somebody say to me, well, you can't be autistic because you're really empathetic with clients, or you're really empathetic with other people. I'm like,
oh,
yeah, that because it's incorrect to assume that
yeah,
those, the autistic people have no empathy. And actually, I think it's often the opposite of that. It can almost be so much empathy and emotion that I have to shut it down sometimes. I have to remind myself that that emotion isn't mine on some occasions, but I don't like the assumption that it falls into a stereotype that we're not caring or empathetic and don't understand. And I think when you put the context of a baby crying into that, if somebody doesn't have that maybe understanding of the fact that this is about our sensory issue, and
yeah,
we have a huge amount of emotion and compassion and empathy, it can feel like it's feeding a incorrect stereotype.
yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. I think you're absolutely right. I hadn't really thought about it like that. I just knew that I felt misunderstood.
Yeah.
But you're right, and I guess this is why those stereotypes still exist, because people are making these incorrect assumptions and not learning or not listening. There's a lot of people out here telling people this stuff. Are they listening?
And I think that when I've thought about sharing my experiences or talking about so many of the things that I've hidden for pretty much my entire life, how I really feel, how things really impact me, the way I've really lived my life in order to just fit in, show up, be accepted. And there's so much of this that terrifies me, like having conversations like this, talking openly about the way life really is. But I feel like, maybe you feel the same, like I've got such a responsibility to do it, because these stereotypes are so outdated, they're so dangerous, they're so damaging, they're so limiting, that unless we start to have these honest conversations and literally smash apart these stereotypes that, I mean, are wildly inaccurate, how is society going to be open to experience all of us in our completely unique ways? Every single human being is completely unique, right? But that it's not, autism and ADHD are not checklists. You do not every autistic and ADHD person has the same traits that impact them in the same way, that you are going to experience in the same way. Because I've said this so many times, like, how autistic a person is not based on how you experience them. It's based on what happens to us as an individual. Like, what is our experience? What extent do we go to cover up, to fit in, to be accepted? And a lot of that, particularly with females, is not experienced by others that are coming into contact with us. So, and that's something that, you know, by having these conversations, it's kind of like being vulnerable and going, this is how it really is for us, or me as an individual and you as an individual. But unless we do more of this and encourage others to do more of this, like, how do we shift those stereotypes? Not even shift them, how do we smash up stereotypes and create an acceptance and a cohesion that means we can all coexist, like, without judgment and without fear of being rejected for who we really are? How do we do it if we're not the voices?
Yeah, amazing. What you've just said is just so powerful that I'm gonna stop the interview here,
Okay.
because I'm so desperate to share it. And what you've just said is like, wow. So thank you so much again for talking to me and being vulnerable, because we're putting this out there for all of the reasons that you just said. So
Yeah.
thanks, Nikki.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to chat again.